Welcome, dearly beloved, those forged in fire. They dismissed you, cast shadows upon your path, unaware they were dealing with a dormant force. Now they are bewildered by the resilience you embody, struggling to comprehend the strength they inadvertently ignited. Pause and consider this deeply. Your trials were not arbitrary. They were a crucible meticulously preparing you for the extraordinary. Did you know the mighty sequoia can spend decades building an extensive root system unseen beneath the earth? Then one day it towers hundreds of feet towards the sky, a monument of unwavering strength. That is you, destined one. Seasons of silence, battles fought in the unseen realm, postponements that felt like outright rejection. They couldn't comprehend you weren't stagnant. You were anchoring, and now the landscape has irrevocably shifted. You no longer seek validation. You are the embodiment of triumph. The paradigm has already transformed. The true conflict has already been resolved, and what they attempted to suppress is now being delivered with unstoppable, divinely orchestrated momentum bearing no trace of its origin. The very voices that once declared your demise now murmur in disbelief. How did they accomplish this? Those who scorned your stillness are now reeling from your meteoric ascent. And let us be candid, if silence truly signified your undoing, you would have crumbled long ago. Therefore, brace yourselves, because in this exploration we are not merely discussing conquest. We are delving into a resurgence so profound, so undeniably ordained, that even your adversaries will question the very fabric of reality. And should this be the inevitable consequence of their actions, perhaps a gesture of empathy is in order. This transformation demands unwavering attention. Let's commence. Number 1. They wagered on your breaking point, but you erected an empire amidst the ruins. Their entire strategy hinged on your collapse. They scrutinized your every move, subjecting you to silent trials, patiently awaiting the moment when life's burdens would prove insurmountable. They sought to overwhelm you with pressure, dismantle you with setbacks, and corrode you with treachery. Yet their calculations failed to account for your capacity to transmute pain into purpose, to forge strength from adversity. You transcended mere survival. You underwent a profound metamorphosis. As they gossiped in hushed tones, you were laying the groundwork for your future. As they cast dirt, you were establishing foundations. You were never simply idle. You were acutely observant, constantly learning, adapting, healing, and accumulating invisible victories that eluded their perception. You embarked on a journey of self-discovery, transforming into someone unrecognizable, not for their validation, but because the magnitude of the storm demanded your evolution. They believed that chaos would leave you shattered, yet it served as your training ground. Your heartbreak became your guide. Your solitude became your laboratory. You mastered the art of navigating the darkness unaided, without a map or guarantees. And therein lies the crux of their miscalculation. They assumed that withholding support would ensure your failure. Instead, you unearthed a reservoir of power they never fathomed you possessed. You flourished in the barren soil of their silence. You ascended in the absence of applause. You bloomed in the very environment designed to bury you. They underestimated you because they conflated strength with ostentation. But your true power resided in its quietude, its depth, its strategic deployment. You didn't engage in their cacophony of conflict. You responded with a soaring transcendence. That is precisely why it succeeded. You refused to descend to their level. You ascended beyond its confines. Now they watch in stunned silence, realizing that your triumph was not a matter of chance. You evolved into an unstoppable force. You transformed every setback into a strategic advantage. You perfected the art of rebuilding without succumbing to bitterness. And the most astonishing aspect of it all, you never proclaimed your victory. You allowed your radiance to speak volumes. This triumph is unlike any other. It did not arise from underhanded tactics or forced outcomes. It emerged from constructing an empire amidst the rubble, achieved in quiet determination. They assumed you were faltering. Now they understand. Whatever your methods, they proved effective. And you didn't simply win, you mastered the entire game. Number 2, your victory wasn't predicated on greater aggression. It was born from your steadfast refusal to emulate your detractors. Your triumph wasn't the product of being the loudest, the most flamboyant, or the most confrontational. It stemmed from maintaining your integrity when everything around you conspired to cultivate bitterness. They targeted your tranquility, your reputation, your self-assurance, resorting to every conceivable tactic to drag you down into their mire. But you refused to succumb to their provocations, and that is precisely why they were defeated. They desperately desired you to break, to stoop, to retaliate in a manner mirroring their own. They needed you to respond like them to justify their own chaotic existence. But instead, you stood firm in your truth, safeguarding your dignity. You consciously chose not to become a reflection of your pain, and that requires a unique form of fortitude. This is not weakness. It is power restrained, deliberately channeled. They believed they were engaged in a battle of attrition, but you were not participating in their games. You were engaged in healing. You were fiercely protecting your energy. You were entrusting divine forces to handle matters too sacred for your own intervention. Had you retaliated, they would have labeled you as enraged. Had you exposed them, they would have dismissed you as petty. Had you fought back, they would have proclaimed, "See, they are no different from us." But you remained steadfast in your path. You moved with grace and refinement. You allowed your growth to eclipse any possible insult. That is the essence of true victory, not merely attaining advancement, but doing so without compromising your core values. You did not resort to schemes, falsehoods, or the denigration of others to reach your present position. You prioritized integrity over attention, grace over gossip, purpose over pride. Such conduct is uncommon, which explains why your ascent defied their predictions. They perceived you as passive, yet you were actively calculating, observing, and discerning. You were scrutinizing how individuals behaved when they perceived you as vulnerable. You allowed them to reveal their true selves and then simply stepped out of their path. You allowed karma to work while you focused on your next level. And now you have arrived, still possessing your inherent character. That is why this triumph is already yours. While they were consumed with winning the battle, you were evolving into the type of individual capable of inheriting the entire war. You did not merely win. You transcended their limitations, and nothing speaks louder than unwavering integrity. Number 3, they mistook delays for denials, unaware that you were undergoing a coronation in private. They assumed that the delay signaled your defeat. They presumed that the absence of overt activity implied a lack of meaningful progress within you. However, they failed to recognize that you were immersed in a sacred period of alignment. You were not being overlooked. You were being meticulously prepared. True breakthroughs do not announce themselves with fanfare. They take root quietly beneath the surface, where no one observes, approves, or witnesses the internal victories. That is precisely where your authentic power was cultivated, not in the spotlight, but in the sanctuary of silence. While they clamored for attention, you were being refined for impact. They interpreted your stillness as stagnation, oblivious to the fact that certain victories necessitate tranquil waters, not raucous noise. What appeared to be a state of entrapment was in reality a divinely orchestrated strategy. Divine forces were withholding advancement until all the necessary elements were in place: your heart, your mindset, your boundaries, your discernment. Because a blessing bestowed prematurely can feel like a curse. Yet you persevered even when it defied logical comprehension, and you will observe that the more you achieved alignment, the less you felt compelled to announce your progress. The greater the peace you discovered, the less you concerned yourself with proving a point. That is when your true triumph commenced, because the delay did not diminish your drive. It amplified it. You ceased engaging in battles that were not your own. You relinquished roles that no longer aligned with your growth. You were no longer in pursuit. You were in the process of becoming. Consequently, events are now unfolding spontaneously, effortlessly, because you are no longer the person they remember. And the opportunities now presenting themselves are not the result of pleading or coercion. They are opening because you have attained the necessary readiness. Everything you believed you had missed is now rapidly catching up to you. And those who believed you were excluded from the game are beginning to realize that you are the game. You did not miss your destined moment. It was patiently awaiting your emergence into your higher self. That is why it succeeded. Because you ceased fixating on the clock and embraced the unfolding process. You honored the route. And now that the transformation has occurred, the truth is undeniable. Whatever their preconceptions about you, they were fundamentally mistaken. The delay did not negate you. It defined you. Number 4, you mastered the art of enduring hardship without succumbing to self-pity. You navigated profound adversity without resorting to performative suffering. You traversed your own personal hell, yet you refrained from staging a spectacle of your pain. You did not solicit sympathy from an audience. You refused to transform your pain into a form of entertainment. While others crumble under the weight of adversity, you stood tall with trembling resolve and chose to become your own savior. That is a level of strength they cannot comprehend. You felt every wound. You heard every falsehood. You endured betrayals, setbacks, postponements, and silent battles that went unrecognized. Yet you did not seek pity. You did not wear your pain as a costume to elicit sympathy. You chose to allow the pain to educate you rather than define you. You did not merely experience pain, you learned from it. You scrutinized your scars like sacred texts, transforming them into sources of power. Observers awaited your inevitable breakdown. They believed that the silence signified defeat. They were unaware that you were engaged in profound internal work. You were confronting wounds that would have crushed the vast majority of individuals. You did not bypass the necessary steps. You did not numb the pain. You sat with it, confronting it directly. Consequently, you are not embittered. You have not undergone a superficial healing. You have completed the genuine work. While they were mocking or ignoring you, you were transcending the very version of yourself they believed they had destroyed. They attempted to break you, anticipating your return in supplication. They expected you to collapse under the cumulative weight of your burdens, but you refused to shatter. You rebuilt yourself piece by piece, unaided and unobserved. That is what sets you apart. You did not beg for solace. You became your own source of comfort. You evolved into your own guide, your own counselor, your own protector. You turned inward, and that is where the breakthrough occurred, not through rescue, but through profound revelation. Now, when they gaze upon you, they do not perceive the lingering pain. They behold the radiance born from it. You need not offer explanations. The peace you exude speaks volumes. That is why it succeeded, because you refused to allow pain to define your identity. You transformed it into your pivotal turning point. And now they are bewildered because you have not become more vulnerable. You have become more astute. You have not become a victim. You have become a vessel. You did not suffer in vain. You suffered with a profound sense of purpose, and you emerged transformed. Number 5. You did not require revenge. Your elevation served as the ultimate exposure. You did not squander your time attempting to settle scores. You did not post cryptic pronouncements. You did not embark on retaliatory rants, reveal names, or circulate incriminating evidence to prove a point. You remained composed when it inflicted the most pain, and that composure was not an indication of weakness. It was a demonstration of unwavering discipline. You understood that authentic retribution does not manifest through noise. It arises through elevation. You did not need to expose their actions. Life itself accomplished that for you. The very individuals who attempted to assassinate your character are now struggling to maintain the facade they have meticulously constructed. And the most gratifying aspect of it all, you did not lift a finger to contribute to their downfall. You allowed time to reveal the truth. You entrusted divine forces to handle matters beyond the scope of your intervention. You trusted that truth does not require a spokesperson. It simply requires space to unfold. You possess the capacity to obliterate everything. You were entirely justified in doing so, but you chose peace over pettiness, and that pivotal decision transformed everything. While they were attempting to destroy you with slander, you were ascending in quiet determination. While they were fixated on bringing you low, you were being drawn toward higher elevations. That is a level of transcendence that no falsehood can endure. The truth is, you were never vying for their approval. You were diligently pursuing your purpose. You were secure in your identity even when they attempted to portray you as something contrary to your essence. And now your life is beginning to reflect the reality you always knew. You do not need to elaborate on the events that transpired. Your radiance serves as the definitive explanation. Your tranquility is the ultimate testament. Your growth is the undeniable retort. They sought to provoke you into abandoning your character and acting out of raw emotion. They desired to portray you as guilty, unstable, or petty, but you refused to succumb to their machinations. You safeguarded your spirit, and that act of preservation translated into profound advancement. You allowed your transformation to communicate in a language understood only by the spirit. And now the individuals who once misunderstood you are witnessing the revelation of truth in deliberate motion. You did not require revenge. You needed time, growth, and elevation. And once those three elements aligned, everything concealed was brought to light without your utterance of a single word. That is why you triumphed, because you refused to allow pain to derail you from your path. You empowered purpose to elevate you to greater heights. Number 6. You embodied the proof that divine strategy appears as utter lunacy to the uninitiated. To the casual observer, it seemed as though you were declining. You were not as visible as you once were. You were not sharing your experiences as openly as before. You were distant, private, and reserved. To them, that signified something amiss. They assumed you were faltering, failing, or fading away. However, they failed to recognize that you were at the heart of a divine strategy, a strategy that defied the comprehension of those who lacked spiritual attunement. You were compelled to move with deliberate caution, not to cultivate an air of mystique, but because the magnitude of what you carried demanded protection. Each step required divine guidance, not forceful imposition. Every boundary had to be erected with precision, not explained for the sake of seeking approval. You could not afford distractions. You could no longer indulge in the same cyclical patterns while expecting to achieve breakthrough. Thus, you retreated not out of deficiency, but out of sagacity. They attributed your actions to arrogance because you ceased making yourself readily accessible. They interpreted your actions as fear because you did not seize every opportunity presented to you. They deemed it a loss because you prioritized stillness over visibility, but they were unaware of the instructions guiding your actions. They did not comprehend the level of obedience required to refrain from reacting, defending, or proving your worth. You moved in silence because external noise would have impeded your alignment. That is why they are now perplexed, because the trajectory of your life deviates from their preconceived notions of success. You did not pursue, you attracted. You did not clamor for visibility, you were deliberately placed in it. You did not aggressively market yourself, yet opportunities now present themselves effortlessly, defying conventional explanations. It lacks fairness, it lacks logic, and that is precisely the point. Divine favor will perpetually elude the understanding of those who can only comprehend established formulas. You are the living testament that what is divinely constructed cannot be explained, only revealed. And upon its revelation, it requires no backstory. It stands on its own merit. You did not adhere to the path they envisioned for you. You followed the path divinely ordained for you. And even when it appeared as though you were making no progress, you persisted. That is why it succeeded. That is why you triumphed, because you entrusted a plan that transcended their opinions. and the ensuing outcome is astonishing them beyond comprehension. Number 7. Your discernment served as a formidable weapon they never knew you possessed. They believed they were 10 steps ahead of you. They assumed their psychological manipulation, gossip, and subtle sabotage would destabilize you. They were convinced they could distort narratives, bait you into impulsive reactions, or erode you over time through covert undermining. What they failed to foresee was your discernment sharp, silent, and precise. You were not playing by their rules. While they engaged in physical realm scheming, you were attuned to the spiritual realm. You perceived events before their manifestation. You sensed shifts before they became visible. You detected intentions masked by disingenuous smiles. You did not require proof. Your spirit inherently perceived the atmosphere. That is why they consistently found themselves confounded. Your reactions deviated from their expectations because you were operating from a different dimension. You were not reacting from ego. You were moving with heightened awareness. You selected your words with meticulous care. You safeguarded your energy with unwavering resolve. You distanced yourself from situations not out of trepidation, but because you already possessed foreknowledge of their consequences. That is not fear, that is strategic foresight. They persistently attempted to ensnare you emotionally, mentally, and socially, but you deftly evaded traps they were certain would capture you. That was not mere coincidence. It was spiritual insight. You were no longer plagued by self-doubt. You were cognizant of your inherent worth. You were secure in your identity. You were familiar with the sensation of inner peace, and anything that disrupted it was swiftly removed without warning or justification. You allowed individuals to reveal their true nature. You did not engage in disputes. You did not resort to exposure. You simply observed, adapted, and ascended. That is what disoriented them. They anticipated noise. You bestowed clarity. They anticipated drama. You created distance. They anticipated vulnerability. You emanated wisdom. And while they exhausted themselves attempting to provoke you, you were being elevated in silent determination. You did not need to retaliate, react impulsively, or defend your every action. You allowed your discernment to guide you like a compass through the labyrinth of their confusion. That is why you continued to prevail even when your actions appeared subdued. You were never lagging behind. You were never oblivious to the true circumstances. You were merely precise in your actions. You assessed the battlefield before the commencement of hostilities, and by the time they realized their inability to outmaneuver you, you had already departed unburdened, inaccessible, victorious. Number 8. You did not merely survive the inferno, you became impervious to its flames. You endured trials that should have destroyed you. The relentless pressure, the agonizing heartbreak, the calculated betrayals, the persistent mental and emotional warfare. All of it was intended to utterly dismantle you, and for a time it nearly succeeded. However, instead of being reduced to ashes, you were forged into impenetrable armor. You did not simply endure the fire, you allowed it to refine you. Those struggles did not merely challenge your emotions, they reconfigured your nervous system. They reshaped your perceptions of others, your actions, your thought processes, and your methods of safeguarding your inner peace. Your reactions are no longer the same. Your responses are no longer characterized by panic. You no longer require external validation to the extent you once did. That version of you so easily triggered, so readily influenced, so easily broken is gone. Now the same type of storm that once left you prostrate no longer causes even a tremor. You have endured too much to be shaken by trivial matters. You have been tested to your core, and through every trial, every loss, every solitary night, you did not merely persevere. You underwent a profound metamorphosis. That is why their attacks are no longer effective. They have inadvertently trained you to become untouchable. Individuals familiar with your former self persist in attempting to trigger the same emotional responses, but those triggers no longer function. They are still engaging with the person you once were, oblivious to the fact that you have been upgraded through the fire. You were compelled to confront your own shadows. You were compelled to feel the pain that most individuals attempt to avoid, but you did not flee. You endured it, processed it, and evolved as a result, and now you are not merely stronger. You are unshakable, not because you are detached or emotionally numb, but because you possess profound understanding. You have witnessed the worst. You have experienced the depths of despair. You are familiar with the contours of darkness, and you no longer fear it. You navigate its realms with a renewed sense of clarity, discernment, and power. That is what individuals fail to grasp. They mistake your composure for arrogance. They mistake your silence for conceit, but in reality you are simply no longer affected by the things that once threatened to consume you. Not because you are superior to them, but because you have transcended them. The fire sought to consume you, but it ultimately crowned you. You are now impervious to its flames, and no weapon forged against you can even inflict a scratch. Number 9. You allowed humiliation to humble you and subsequently utilized that humility to erect an empire. They believed that the humiliation would crush you. They were confident that their disrespect, exclusion, mockery, and misrepresentation of you would cause you to collapse. And to be candid, it did inflict pain. It destabilized you. It left lasting scars, but it did not engender bitterness. It cultivated wisdom. You did not allow the shame to diminish your self-worth. You allowed it to instill humility. You allowed it to strip away the ego, the incessant need for approval, the illusion of control. You allowed it to teach you your authentic identity when you had nothing to prove and no one to applaud your efforts. That level of self-awareness became your foundational bedrock. It became the quiet ground upon which you stood when nothing made sense. While the majority of individuals allow humiliation to harden them, you allowed it to soften you in the precise areas, not into a state of vulnerability, but into a state of profound depth. You relinquished the need for external validation. You ceased engaging in performative acts. You ceased pursuing endeavors that drained your spirit. You sat with the pain and allowed it to instruct you. You rewired your soul in quiet solitude. You resolved that you would not emerge from this experience seeking to impress. You would emerge whole. You were not constructing your future from pride. You were constructing it from purpose. You did not seek retribution. You sought restoration. You were not fixated on proving anyone wrong. You were committed to becoming the most healed, grounded, and aligned version of yourself possible, and that is precisely what made this victory so distinct. This triumph is not ostentatious. It is not about avenging wrongs. It is about the manner in which you ascended without pretense. It is about the manner in which you cultivated peace amidst chaos, how you utilized every tear, every disappointment, every rejection as a building block and laid the foundation of your empire without any external awareness. You were too preoccupied with becoming to be distracted by trivial conflicts. The truth is, had you retaliated from pride, you would have achieved a momentary victory, but because you allowed the humiliation to humble you, you achieved a victory that will last a lifetime. That is why the blessing is enduring, because it is not founded upon ego. It is founded upon evolution. And now that everything is unfolding, individuals are stunned because they believed they had buried you in humiliation. They failed to realize that they were handing you the very soil you would utilize to construct something impervious to their machinations. Number 10. You did not force doors. You became the key. You did not beg for access. You did not manipulate your way into advantageous positions. You were not engaged in performative acts solely to gain recognition. While others were attempting to articulate their way into favor, you were diligently engaged in inner work. You were achieving alignment. You were healing, evolving, and elevating in quiet determination. And that alignment is what transformed you into the key, not merely to unlock doors, but to become the door itself. While individuals were exhausting themselves chasing platforms, you were becoming sufficiently grounded to sustain one. You were not fixated on being seen. You were committed to being authentic, and as a consequence, you did not have to force anything. You attained a level of clarity and purpose that caused certain opportunities to seek you out. Chambers began to murmur your name. Individuals began to ponder how you had achieved your success without resorting to clamorous self-promotion. They did not witness the internal rewiring that transformed you into a magnetic force. Your mere presence now carries weight. You do not need to aggressively assert yourself. You do not need to persistently pursue validation. You enter spaces and transform the atmosphere not because you command it, but because your growth has prepared you for it. You are not struggling to assimilate. You are attracting environments that resonate with the person you have become. This did not occur by chance. It did not occur through strategic manipulation. It occurred through surrender. You ceased chasing opportunities that were not aligned with your authentic self. You ceased applying pressure in environments where your presence was not valued. And in that state of stillness, your energy recalibrated. You transitioned from seeking entry to becoming the very reason a space holds value. Now the individuals who once overlooked you are circling back. The opportunities that once dismissed you are reappearing. So there you have it, my friend. This journey of fire silence and unwavering resilience is ultimately a testament to the power within you. It's about recognizing that those moments of seeming defeat were actually the crucible forging your strength, that your quiet dedication was building an empire beneath the surface, and that your greatest victory lies not in aggression or revenge, but in remaining true to your own integrity. You didn't just survive, you transformed, you ascended, and you became the key. Now I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Have you experienced a similar journey? What resonated most with you? Leave a comment below, ask a question, or just join the conversation. We're all in this together. And if this message spoke to you and you want to hear more like this, please hit that subscribe button. I wouldn't want you to miss out on future explorations of strength, resilience, and the incredible power within us all. Until next time, till next time, till next time, till next time, till next time.